Let's get started. Hello from the future to most of you, as it's already 1 a.m. on Monday, the 24th, here in Australia, where I'm presenting from today. All jokes aside, thank you for making the time to join us for this webinar, where we will discuss digital IDs and their impact on the current IDV market. How severe will the impact be? And will the digital ID break up the traditional IDV market altogether? We've worked with Forrester on some in-depth research, and we'll share this with you today. Just a few housekeeping things. If you're having any trouble with the audio, please try dialing in on the numbers provided in the invitation. Please feel free to submit your questions live during our presentation in the chat, and we will address them in the Q&A at the end, or our team will address them as we go. This webinar is being recorded, and we will be mailing out the link over the next few days. There will be two of us presenting today, me, Henry Pattishman, Executive VP of Identity Verification Solutions at Regula. And let me introduce my co-presenter for today's webinar, Nick Pope, Director of Security and Standards Associates and Chair of ETSI, Technical Committee on Electronic Signature and Trust Services. Nick, could you please say a few words about your background in IDV?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone from my time zone. I've been involved with the identity and security market for a number of decades, working with a number of Thales and various other big suppliers of identity solutions, and also supporting government institutions. And also I've been involved with standardization around digital signatures and X509 since the early days. And now, for my sins, I am now chairman of a committee that oversees the standards meeting the EU regulatory requirements for electronic signatures and identities, and the supporting trust services.
That's fantastic. It's a pleasure to have your wealth of knowledge with us today.
Thank you.
Just a few words about our company. Regula has been in the industry for over 30 years. It was founded in 1992. It all started with manufacturing of devices for banknote authenticity and ID verification purposes. From the very beginning, we've had all our research and development 100% in-house, which allows us to control and guarantee the quality at every step of the verification process. Currently, more than 80 countries' borders are equipped with Regula solutions and devices. Also, we proudly offer the most comprehensive library of identity documents from 250 countries and territories that is being used by thousands of our clients around the world. We're a global company with worldwide presence, which gives us the ability to collect feedback and knowledge from all continents. We are the only company on the market, and we're not afraid to say it, that provides complete high-quality analysis of security features that embraces what we consider the four key spheres of software for ID and biometric verification, forensic devices for documents, information reference systems, and training workshops. Actually, we're a one-stop shop for building an effective verification process, and it really doesn't matter what kind of process you have. The flexibility of our products ensures that our solution can be integrated into practically any process. Now, let's get started on today's topic and begin by defining what is a digital ID. Well, a digital ID is the electronic equivalent of an individual's identity card. A digital ID can be presented electronically to prove an individual's identity and their right to access information or services online. The World Economic Forum defined the following core principles of digital ID. It needs to be useful, inclusive, secure, offer choice, and be fit for purpose. So why do we need a digital ID? Well, in today's world, where many interactions are now online, we need a useful, inclusive, secure, and fit for purpose way to prove our identity electronically, whilst keeping the choice of when and where we want to do this. If this can be achieved, it will make things easier for citizens, businesses, and governments, and will enable significant economic value by facilitating easier access to goods and services. In fact, in an ideal world, it should be a basic right of every person to have a digital identity that is recognized everywhere. Nick, can you please share some information on the progress of digital IDs in Europe?
Yes, so the first main activity around electronic identities came in 2014 of a regulation which dealt with identities and electronic signatures. And it was very much national-based electronic identities. So each country in Europe had their own identity scheme and method of proving their identity electronically. And then there was a gateway border function for cross recognition between countries. And it was found in a study which sort of led up to a decision in 2021 to take a different approach, that there was limited adoption in a number of countries of digital or electronic IDs, and even less use cross-border. There was very much its national base and its national solution, and only required for national use. It wasn't really seen as a trans-border solution for identity. So having had a study identifying the problem of low adoption of the early electronic identities which are based on national IDs, the decision was made to take a different approach based around what's called a European digital identity wallet, which was a common solution which runs on most people's platforms, either a web browser or a smartphone or a simple device, and making it as straightforward as possible to use and have a multi-purpose. And the aim is to achieve by 2030 or sometime shortly after that to have a digital identity solution which was across borders and recognize the same way of operating internationally across Europe. And so over the intervening period, there was lots of technical and regulatory work, and in about a month ago, finally published a regulation which provides a regulatory framework for nations to produce their own variant of a wallet, but it had to meet common requirements for technology and fit on the same type of platform that was foreseen for wallets. So it's very much an ambitious approach to achieve not only a common solution, but an easy to use and readily accessible through one's own personal device. Back to you, Henry.
Great. Thank you, Nick. That's great to hear that we're hopefully well on track for 2030.
Ambitious.
Obviously, hearing all of that and knowing that that's what's happening in the market, and us being a leader in the IDV market, it was imperative for us to find out if the introduction of digital IDs will lead to the collapse of the market for IDV solutions. And, you know, it's probably a topic that some of you may have given some thought to as well. To help us answer this question, we combined our efforts with Forrester and did some in-depth research into this area. We decided to conduct a study together with Forrester in which we interviewed representatives of various industries about what they think about the implementation and penetration of digital ID and whether a virtual document will replace the paper or plastic physical IDs of today. We commissioned Forrester Consulting to conduct the research with custom survey questions asked of respondents with responsibility for identity verification solutions at their organizations. The custom survey began in January this year and was completed just earlier this month. 226 director level and above decision makers from the USA, Germany, UK, and UAE were interviewed from companies with a size of 500 employees or more. For this research, the following industries were selected: technology and technology services, financial services, telecommunication, aviation, and government. Earlier this week, we announced the results of this study to the media, and today we want to share some of them with you. Digital ID awareness. So 49% of respondents have a high to very high awareness of digital IDs. In some countries, digital ID are already implemented in governmental institutions, thus increasing the level of awareness. Digital IDs are poised to revolutionize sectors that rely heavily on secure and efficient identity verification. Survey results predict the most significant and fastest benefits are in online financial transactions, 46%, online account opening, 38%, and e-commerce, 33%, reflecting a strong expectation for these technologies to enhance user experience and trust. Particularly in the UK, half of the respondents believe e-government services will see the greatest improvement, more than any other country surveyed. This shift towards digital IDs promises not only to streamline transactions, but also to bolster security, illustrating pivotal advancement in how we interact with services daily. As expected, the use cases for digital ID are at this stage identical to the use cases for traditional ID verification. Things like online account opening, remote customer onboarding, e-government services, online financial transactions, healthcare services, age verification, cross-border services, mobile device access, workplace access, and remote work, e-commerce transactions, travel and hospitality bookings, and remote education. Let's have a quick poll. Do you follow updates in digital ID standards? And the optional answers are: yes, I follow them regularly. Yes, I do from time to time. No, I don't. Or what standards? Let's see what answers this group comes up with. I'll give you another 10 seconds or so to select your answer in the poll that's popped up. Okay, and now we've got the results. The majority follow the standards from time to time, which is great to hear. And if we combine the first answer, which is I follow them regularly, we actually get 80% of attendees actually look at the standards. Fantastic. Only 4% asked what standards. You guys need to get on board. All right, let's move on. As the digital landscape evolves, 74% of stakeholders emphasize the necessity for global digital ID standards to ensure interoperability and consistency across borders. This unified approach is pivotal, not only for maintaining a vibrant identity verification market, but also for fostering its evolution. One of the key challenges is that the existing standards in different countries and/or regions are not connected. And this is a huge problem in making digital ID unified. Nick, you have been involved in creating standards for a long time and have a lot of experience in this field. Could you please shed some light on the European approach to digital ID standards and how the global standard process is progressing?
Okay, yes. So it's very much taking a different approach. So if I can move on to the next slide, that traditionally you have an identifier which you use for multiple purposes, and you try and gateway that one identifier to different purposes, but you always revealing the same identifier. This has lots of privacy issues and flexibility issues. So it started with the worldwide Web Consortium developing a new data model for identity called the credential model. So in this case, rather than having a single identifier, you have a set of credentials you present for different purposes. So in this picture, we've got a passport that I use for transborder. I've got my flight ticket. I've got my payment card. I've got a railway card, and I may have other benefit cards, health cards. And in practice, you never want to present full identity information as represented by your passport for normal day-to-day operations. And so the verifiable credential model is very much user-centric. The different forms of credential representing your identity is under control of the wallet holder. So the wallet holder prevents those relevant credentials as needed to access different services. And I've included a link to the relevant standard if you want to get into the details of the W3C credential model. But this is being used in a number of different places for different purposes, but seems to be forming the basis of lots of different approaches. Then going on to the next slide. This is being worked on in ISO in a standard called 23220. Being a standards person, I love numbers, but this is very much taking the concept of using your mobile phone as a means of holding your credentials. So within the phone, you're probably familiar with wallets already in your Google phone or iPhone, that you pick out a slide of the sort of identity you need. And this series of standards currently under development, but with part 1 fully specified, which provides a framework, provides a way of interoperating and managing your smartphone for mobile-based digital wallets, in which various identity and credential providers can add to your particular identity. This work started around a standard for mobile driving licenses, and the experience of applying to mobile driving licenses has been generalized in this ISO standards. And in generalizing it, it adopted the W3C credential model, which I just described. This set of standards is fairly well progressed. There's draft standards for about half of the set of standards. I think there's a set of 6 parts, and for about 4 of the main parts, parts 1 has been fully defined. The parts 2, 3, and 4, which are the essential interoperability standards, have been proposed, and it's just going through final editorial changes and agreements. So I expect by 2025, the core set of standards will be available. And if you follow the link on this on this page, you will find the part 1 document, which will give you an idea of how the overall model works. Then moving on to how this is adopted in Europe. This works in bringing the concept of an identity card. So every European digital identity wallet has at its core a digital equivalent to your identity card. But then you don't use your identity card everywhere. Rather than using your identity card, you have lots of different other credentials. So there's projects ongoing introducing the mobile driving license linked to the same wallet. The academic institutions are looking at this as a way of publishing your diplomas or your degree certificates and giving you credentials so that you can prove that you are qualified to carry out certain purposes. It's being used, the insurance market, as a basis for identifying you or your vehicle or your whatever you're trying to insure. Travel, ICAO are also interested, and we're working in Europe on applying across Europe the ability to use your European wallet as a travel credential across Europe. And also for banking, it's very much being encouraged that banks adopt this as a way of managing payments. What is pretty unique about the European digital identity wallet is it's going for a very high level of security, and sensitive information aren't just held in any piece of software. It's either in your SIM or a secure element within your phone, or in a special website that you have direct authorization to use, which holds your digital credentials. But also, for the privacy point of view, it's very much aimed at selective disclosure your credentials, so you don't need to reveal your full identity or your name and date of birth for every purposes. Depending on what you want, you can just have a bank number or a travel ticket number, and that is all you need to present, but it would be held in the same digital identity wallet. And we've got a very ambitious implementation schedule. There are already 4 large-scale pilots which have been operating for about 6 months and developing solutions around the European digital identity wallet. So some are very much centered around the national identity card, got some working on driving licenses, some working on payment and travel. So there's already a large amount of experience in operating this. And then the aim is to have each nation in Europe by 2026 have their own version of the common code, which is available already and being tested out on the large-scale pilots. And this is regulatory required by 2026, whether they meet that ambition. And certainly, as I said, we're aiming to have cross Europe availability by 2030. So the details, there's a website which identifies the current projects, the objectives, and the technical work, if you just follow the link on this website. Back to you, Henry.
Great. Thank you very much, Nick. That was some very insightful information that I'm sure our audience today would have been very interested in hearing. Now, back to our survey results. So digital ID impact and benefits and challenges. Let's see what the respondents had to say on those. Impact on revenue. The majority of respondents anticipate a positive impact on revenue from the adoption of digital IDs, with almost 1/3 expecting an increase of 20 to 29%, and almost a quarter of respondents foresee an increase of 10 to 19%. Interestingly, quite a significant 16% of participants are optimistic about a substantial revenue increase of more than 30%, while only a negligible 1% do not expect an increase in revenue at all. This means that the implementation of digital IDs, the market is expecting to attract new customers and facilitate more transactions with existing customers by minimizing potential IDV barriers, which is very positive. Now let's have a look at the impact on citizens. The survey results indicate a broad expectation of positive outcomes from the adoption of digital ID in the government sector. The most anticipated outcome is an increase in citizen trust, with 2/3 of respondents highlighting greater confidence in government services and digital transactions. Cost savings are expected by 55% of participants, reflecting a prediction of reduced administrative and operational expenses. Enhanced security standards and protection for citizens are anticipated by half of the respondents, followed closely by improved data management, signaling expectations for better data accuracy and management. Approximately 45% expect digital IDs to improve living standards for citizens and increase tax collection efficiency, while 42% foresee increased transparency and accountability. Reducing bureaucracy and red tape is anticipated by 39% of respondents, and fostering economic growth is expected by 34%, indicating a belief in the potential for digital ID to stimulate business innovation and economic activity. Now, security and the impact on security. The adoption of digital ID technologies marks a significant leap forward in securing data and reducing fraud across industries. In the US, 82% of organizations expect digital IDs to substantially improve their security infrastructure and fraud prevention capabilities. A sentiment that is somewhat lower in the UAE at only 68%. This notable difference underscores the varied expectations and readiness levels across regions. Digital IDs are set to transform how transactions and customer data are secured, addressing both current vulnerabilities and anticipating emerging threats. The implementation of digital ID is not merely an upgrade. It is a critical evolution that could offer a strategic edge in the ongoing battle against fraud. But there will be risks. DDoS attacks, bots, failure of servers, vulnerabilities at state issuer level. This could cause the entire population to really suffer. These are key concerns of most people who think digital ID implementation is not secure. The other common concern is that of recovery. If your digital ID is stolen and or compromised in some way, will there be a process to recover it? And what will that process be? What proof will you need to provide to prove your identity? Is it an original physical document, perhaps? Nick, what do you think will be the impact? Are you more on the positive side or the negative side?
I'm in the longer term, it's positive. As I was suggesting, I think it's still evolving. I think the 2030 dates that I mentioned earlier is still a bit over ambitious. There's lots of technical and security concerns that the ambition to have a secure part of your phone is still working with the mobile phone companies to solve that problem, but it's still in sort of test bench, and also sort of how you onboard is still also to be sorted, and I think coming back on to biometrics. So there's still some difficult issues to solve. I think it will take a bit more time and experience to actually make it a full reality. But I would say, having worked on digital signatures, I started working on digital signature regulations in 1999, and it's only sort of now it's really matured and everyone understands it, but it's taken 2 decades to actually mature the digital signature market. I think it's similar. I would expect more of 20 years of gaining experience before it really becomes an everyday thing. You pick up your phone. I've already got a wallet on my phone, but it's not very secure. Having a secure wallet on my phone is still some way away.
Great. Thank you, Nick. Now, impact on fraud. Half of the respondents expect a 30% or greater reduction in fraud with the implementation of digital IDs. This is actually quite a positive sign, as an expectation of such significant reduction in fraud could directly financially justify broad implementation and therefore encourage uptake. So very positive response there. Let's have a look at the expected benefits of digital ID adoption. The survey highlights several positive transformation factors attributed to the adoption of digital identity within the industry. Enhanced security and fraud prevention top the list, with more than 3/4 of respondents expressing agreement or strong agreement on its impact. This is closely followed by improved customer and citizen experience and improved efficiency in identity verification processes, both receiving 75% approval rating. Better compliance with regulatory standards is acknowledged by 73% of participants, indicating its significance in the transition towards digital identity. Cost savings in the long run are anticipated by 71% of respondents, while the facilitation of cross-service adoption is seen as a benefit by 70%. Attracting new customers and revenue streams, although slightly lower, is still considered as a likely positive outcome by 68% of respondents. Now, for the challenges with digital ID adoption. As digital ID adoption grows, it is essential to recognise and address these potential negative impacts highlighted by the respondents. The most significant concern noted by half of the respondents is the increased risk of data breaches and cybersecurity threats, underscoring the critical need for robust security measures in digital ID systems. Meanwhile, 44% voiced fears about privacy, worried that digital IDs could deepen surveillance and data tracking. Additionally, the potential for technology failure and identity theft alarms 35%, highlighting the importance of reliable systems. Beneath the digital advancements, more than 1/4 of respondents worry about widening social inequalities, illustrating the necessity for inclusive and equitable digital solutions. This journey isn't just about adopting new technology. It's about ensuring it serves everyone justly and safely. Now let's move on to current IDV processes and how to adopt digital ID. Despite advancements in digital IDV technologies, 46% of organizations still do significant manual document verification, including critical checks using passports and driver's licenses. This method coexists with modern techniques such as biometric verification and automated checks. In industries like aviation and finance, where security demands are stringent, physical documents are still regarded as providing unmatched authenticity. Additionally, 44% of firms use third-party services that often rely on physical documents for thorough identity checks. Notably, in countries with rigid regulatory frameworks such as the US and Germany, the reliance on physical documents is particularly pronounced. These methods are integral to a comprehensive multi-layered security approach. While digital methods evolve, physical documents remain indispensable, ensuring reliability and trustworthy identity verification across various regulatory environments. Let's have another quick poll and answer the same question as our survey respondents. What methods are currently used in your organization for remote identity verification? Is it automated document verification, biometric verification, multi-factor authentication, manual document verification, third-party authentication services, or we don't have IDV processes? And you can select multiple answers in this one because obviously you could be utilizing multiple of these. I'll give you another 10 seconds or so to answer the poll that's popped up on the screen. Okay, and the answers are, wow, that's very impressive. 47% have responded that you use biometric verification and 45% use multi-factor authentication, very secure. And 37% used automated document verification. That's great. But it was also very interesting to note that 29% still use manual document verification and also 29% outsource. Very interesting. I guess quite similar to the results that we got from the greater survey that we did. Okay, so physical documents obviously remain critical. The vast majority of respondents, 71%, believe that physical documents are crucial at the moment and will continue to be so in the near future. And this is probably a suitable time for me to share a story regarding the Victorian digital driving licence. Victoria is actually the state where I live in Australia, and recently the state government released to the general public a digital driving licence. At this stage, it is only available for fully licensed drivers and not for learner or probationary drivers. So it's completely excluding the 16 to 22 age group and some others that got their driving license a little bit later in life. And this is actually very counterproductive, as driver's license is the most used proof of age ID in the country. And it's used by the group that are most likely sort of to be asked to prove their age and would be the most likely users of this digital ID are not actually able to get it. So the 16 to 22-year-olds can't get them. The other big challenge is that very few non-government organizations are ready to process this digital ID. There are many age-restricted clubs and bars that require IDs to be scanned to gain entry, but they've invested in the hardware and software to validate physical IDs, but this infrastructure does not cater for this digital driver's license. So obviously a few challenges to overcome, and for these commercial entities, who knows how long they will take to upgrade, unless there is a very specific and proactive legislation to actually make the investment. So digital IDs are coming out in a number of different regions. It's just very important in terms of how they're actually thought through and deployed. And I've got a little bit more to share on that in a few slides. So when does physical document verification remain critical in our view? Well, in-person interactions, especially for people who don't have or don't want digital ID. For people who are not proficient in technology, possibly some of the older generation. Cross-border transactions, so countries will adopt digital IDs at different speeds, depending both on the internal readiness of the country's infrastructure and on cross-country agreement and on standards. Other actions with IDs, like initial identity verification before issuance of a digital ID, restoration of a digital ID, or changing personal data. And in cases where businesses or administrative infrastructure is not ready to adopt digital ID, obviously physical ID will still be key. And of course, as a backup for your digital ID, you may still want to have a physical ID. Recommendations. So follow digital ID standard updates. The technology platform for using digital identity is pretty much ready. And when the standards come into final phase, the path to the rollout of digital ID might be very quick. Despite the rapid adoption of digital documents, when standards are adopted, physical and electronic documents will stay for decades. So don't exclude them from the flow and make sure you cover all of your bases. Audit your IT infrastructure for readiness and transform and or implement your IDV system to work with all types of documents, physical, electronic, and digital. Lastly, and probably very, very importantly, implement biometric verification if you don't have it yet. Biometric verification will stay an essential part of identity verification systems of the future. And since we're talking about biometric verification and how essential it is, we really should cover how important it is in the digital ID verification process. So biometric verification is more secure when it is performed in your trusted perimeter. In simple words, on your servers, on your backend. It completely embraces the zero trust to mobile paradigm when you decide whether to onboard a user or not. This approach also helps you comply with emerging standards. Many industries, such as finance and healthcare, have strict regulatory requirements for identity verification and data protection. Biometric verification solutions can help avoid potential legal issues from those. Nick, I suppose biometry is an important area in what you are currently working on. What is your approach in general, and what are the key challenges?
Definitely. We have a group of people working particularly on identity, what we call identity proofing, identity verification. It, as you say, it has a broad set of techniques, but biometrics is becoming more and more important. And also an interesting thing that's coming out of recent discussions is when you're doing remote identity verification, which should include some liveness checks and things like that, using AI-based automated checks are more reliable than human checks. And that there is still an ongoing discussion that people still like to depend on human-based checks, but those who are leading, are on the forefront, say that you better set up in an AI system some rules for biometric and remote identification, and maybe bring in an expert when you've got very tricky situations. But for the norm, automation is better than your averagely trained person who's doing the identity checks.
Thanks, Nick. That perfectly actually leads me into our next slide, which is how we tackle biometrics. And in the age of sophisticated identity fraud, including fraud enabled by artificial intelligence, we actually use artificial intelligence to fight back. And it's paramount to establish a comprehensive and highly diverse verification process to enable as many identity checks as possible. So our Regula Face SDK fully addresses these challenges and detects printed photo, video replay, and video injections, masks, and electronic devices. This is especially crucial in remote onboarding, as you mentioned. For example, the updated Regula Face SDK blocks 99% of presentation attacks via electronic devices. So Regula's biometric verification adds another layer of security, since not only fraud, but also security issues can arise during the processing session when data can be intercepted on a mobile device. Regula enables server-side verification with end-to-end encryption, where each session has unique parameters, making the enrollment process more accurate and fraud-resistant by defending against different types of attack vectors that I've just mentioned. Identity verification is, of course, much more than just biometric checks. It combines diverse techniques to hit every step of identity proofing. Regula covers them all, delivering basic and advanced authenticity checks for more than 14,000 document templates from 250 countries and territories, and is ready to include digital IDs in this flow as soon as they appear. With advanced biometric verification we talked about on the previous slides, Regula provides a complete solution for identity verification, which is up to date with the latest technology, trends, and regulations. Now, for the conclusion based on Forrester findings. So, presence of physical documents remains integral to identity verification processes, underscoring a harmonious coexistence of traditional and modern authentication methods. Unified global standards implementation is essential. This rallying cry lays the cornerstone for a truly integrated global digital framework, fostering trust and collaboration across borders. Digital IDs is not about replacing physical documents, but enhancing them. Biometric checks are an important part of IDV systems and must be done on the business side. Widespread adoption and positive perception is key. We discovered significant endorsement of digital ID technologies across multiple sectors. It now comes down to the implementation. Thank you for watching our webinar, and now we'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. We've got a few questions coming in. Now, okay, one for you, Nick. When can we expect the ISO IEC 2320-X standards to be fully implemented and adopted?
As I said, I would suggest 2025 they will be fully agreed, and a number of the major provider of wallets are following that work, and so I would expect 23220 implementations appearing in another year or so. There is already an exercise in the US with Apple based around 23220. The thing about 23220 is it has quite a few options within there and doesn't address the essential security questions. So adoption of 23220X means different things on the implementation, and you need to look at the implementation, not just the fact that it follows a standard. The standard provides interoperability, but not necessarily security.
Okay. Let's have a look at another question. What are the main differences you see between digital ID and traditional identification methods for you as an IDV vendor? I guess that's directed at me. So there's no significant difference as far as we're concerned. We are following the standards, and we will be adding digital ID to our library of documents for each country once they are issued. Our infrastructure is fully ready, and we'll implement it as soon as it's live. Let's have a look. What happens if a digital wallet is compromised or lost? That's probably one for you, Nick.
Yeah, there is a parallel activity looking at mechanisms, first of all, for revoking or suspending use of a wallet, and also the ability to recover information. This, I'm afraid, is sort of following on with the current trial implementations, but I expect the real live national implementations will have to support both the revocation and recovery, but it's still proving a tricky problem to solve, so we haven't got all the answers at the moment, but it is recognized as an important area.
Okay. Was there a similar survey conducted for Asia Pacific? No, unfortunately, in this particular survey, we only covered Germany, USA, UK, and UAE. So no, we haven't conducted a similar survey in the APAC region. What steps are being taken to ensure the successful rollout of the European Digital Identity Wallet by 2026?
Well, everyone's working bloody hard. First of all, there is, I don't know how many nations, most of Europe is involved with at least one of the projects. And there is already a source code openly available on the Commission website for this project if you follow through. there is links to source code. So there is common source code and common implementations. There is all the implementations are proof of concept. The 2026 deadline is a dagger holding over nations that they have to provide something. How well that works, I'm slightly cynical about, but they have to provide something, because there's a regulatory rule that says you will provide something in 2026. By 2030, I think it will have started sorting it out. And it's the user acceptability and how easy is it will be to use is yet to be demonstrated. But there's lots of good words, but and lots of money
will have to follow.
There's lots of money as well coming from the Commission, which definitely helps.
Yep. Well, money drives the world, so that and regulations will hopefully make something happen in the near future. Another question here. What is Regula's response to the mentioned fraud cases, deep fakes, for instance? Well, but we can get a bit specific here. Regula's proprietary liveness detection technology is based on active and passive liveness detection technology for security measures against spoofing attacks, deepfakes, and fraud. It efficiently prevents fraudulent presentation attacks, such as the use of static face images with or without electronic devices, printed photos, screen replays, video injections, and so on. And it combines various techniques like texture analysis, depth and shape of an image, facial movement, and other factors to determine whether it is a real life person or a fake representation. So we do have very, very extensive technology that is very, very good at what it does. So that's how we tackle all of the instances, but it is an ongoing battle. As AI gets better, we have to make sure that our systems get better, and it's an ever-going race. So hopefully we win over the bad guys, and that's pretty much the race. This one's for you, Nick. I think, what are the 4 large-scale pilots that you mentioned, and what are their objectives?
Okay. It's easiest to point people at the link that there's potential which is driven to a large extent by France and Germany, and is very much centered around the our national ID card and strong identification. There is a project called DC4EU, which is very much based around distributed technology and distributed ledgers and distributed identities, which almost takes the opposite perspective from potential, that it's all very much decentralized. Then there is EWC, European Web Consortium, and NoBid, which is very much led by the provider industry checking out their technology. So there's quite a good spread across them, and some have close links with the banks. I think is it EWC what have banks as their prime focus, and some in medical care, but it is very good in providing lots of useful use cases. But I do if you want to follow up on the EU Digital Identity Wallet and the pilots, follow the link and you will find all the different pilots and a lot more information.
Great, thank you, Nick. We do have quite a few more questions here, but I'm conscious of the time and I want to make sure that we keep it within the hour. So the rest of the questions will be answered in our email follow-up emails. So please hold out for those. I just want to be conscious of the time. Hopefully you can all see it, because that's all for today. And as I mentioned, we will follow you up on any of your unanswered questions. Once again, I would like to thank you all for your great participation in the webinar. And please don't hesitate to contact us after the webinar in case you have any additional questions. We'll be happy to assist. Please send any of your questions to the email address that you can see on your screen now, kate.johnson@regulaforensics.com. Have a splendid day, evening or night, depending on where you are in the world. And once again, thank you.
And thank you for the opportunity to tell everyone about the EU projects and the standards.
No, thank you very much, Nick. It was an absolute pleasure and great to hear your wealth of knowledge.